Welcome to the Remind Podcast, the podcast where we get inside the real estate entrepreneur's mind. My name is Harrison Smith, and I'm joined today by Olivia O'Toole. How are we doing, Olivia?
I'm great. Thanks. How are you?
Good. So glad to have you. So for those people that don't know who you are, let's talk a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and what you're up to now.
Okay. So like you said, my name is Olivia O'Toole. I live in Massachusetts. Currently, what I'm doing is I'm working as a coach and consultant for real estate teams, agents, admins. So I can come in and help if it's a new hire, help get set up the basis, the onboarding. I can work with an agent in figuring out organizational issues or what they're looking for in hiring. So there's a lot of areas where I can kind of jump in and help, and it's just been a lot of fun getting into that.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a lot of fun to get a peek behind a lot of different businesses, see the different models, how people do it. A lot of great learning experiences that can be had there.
Yeah, and it's fun to be able to kind of get in there and help with getting people sort of unstuck or helping them speed up. So being able to really give that benefit of experience has been really cool.
Oh, for sure. So along those same lines, and that's a pretty unique skill set. What did your path look like? What was your journey into this coaching role? What did that look like?
So I have been in real estate for over a decade, and for a while I was working as an independent TC. Before that, I had actually just sort of fallen into real estate as a temp job, and then took like a 5-year break when the market crashed, and I had my first kid, who is now 17, which is a little terrifying. But I came back in as an independent TC, doing TC and admin work for a few different agents. And then one of the agents that I was working for came in and said, "Hey, I don't know if you would want to consider working with me as an executive assistant." So that worked out really well. So he and I started working together in 2013, and over 9.5 years, we built up and ran the Jim Black Group, which is now about 18 people, 17 or 18. I'm not sure exactly how many right now. So over the course of that, I've been in the seat of the new admin hire. I've been in the seat of, figuring out scaling, figuring out the systems, getting things in place, going from the only admin to an admin team. So at the end of it, I'm able to come at it with the experience from the operations side, from a leadership side, from an organizational side, culture, all of those areas.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into that, right?
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things you've spoken a lot about and you're really passionate about is that relationship between that kind of team lead, rainmaker type role and that key operations person. Can you elaborate a little bit about kind of the yin and yang there?
Absolutely. So that's, the first place where, you're going great, your business is growing, you need to hire someone. And that hire is really, really such a key thing. And when you have, what works out really well is if you have people that have sort of opposing skill sets and, complementary personalities. In most cases, and personalities vary, but in most cases, the agent is going to be, they're going to be a driver personality. They're going to be moving fast. They know what they're doing. They're really good at what they're doing. But then they bring someone on who is more of, a backseat personality. They don't know what they're doing, so they need to learn. So that involves slowing down. And they're going to have more of a let's figure it out and move a little slower. That is a great combination when it's fully maximized, because you've got different sides of the coin. You've got people looking at things differently. You've got the person who's in there saying like, okay, tell me what you're doing and we're going to create a system so that we can keep doing it. And that allows you to scale. That allows you to bring on more people. It allows you to do more, or if you don't even want to do that, it lets you be more efficient and do more business by yourself. So that, and it gets you both to grow together when it works really well.
Exactly. When it works really well is the key to that.
Yes.
And you know, one thing we come across a lot is you've got operating people that come in that maybe don't get great guidance from that team leader person because ops is not their strength, or we find they're often like really underutilized because in some cases that transition from being kind of the lone wolf to now having the team around you is difficult to be able to delegate and hand things off. And you know, what are some of the ways you can help that team leader, rainmaker type mentality break through that barrier and actually utilize that staff around them?
So, and that's exactly true. Like you get a lot of times one of two things. Either this person gets completely overloaded, right? Everything just
Mm.
gets sort of like, so here's my mess, go,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And
Been
this
guilty of that
person,
before.
um, and they just end up really overloaded a lot of times because and it's not all on the agent, right? Because you have these
Sure.
different personalities, and very often the people who fall in the admin role are not people who are very good at speaking up
Mm.
and saying what they need. They may not know what they need. So you may have a situation where they are drowning and they're afraid to say so. So the agent
Mm.
honestly has no idea that this person is drowning or that they don't understand. So what tends to happen with delegation is we sort of start there, and then things aren't happening fast enough or things aren't happening the way the agent wants them to, or there's mistakes. And what you need to do in that case is slow down, explain, answer questions. What happens more often than not is the agent just takes it back because it's easier.
Yep.
It's just easier to get it done. They're frustrated. You know, they hired this person to help and nothing is easier. Everything's more complicated right now. They just take it back. And then everyone's frustrated, right? Because you got the agents frustrated because they're still doing the work that they don't want to be doing. And the admin's frustrated because they are trying to work and learn and not really given the resources and the connection to do so. So where I can help is that I've been on both sides of that. I've been on the side of the new hire where, you know, literally came in and it was like, well, start here and then just do the things we need. Um, and so I've been able to learn, okay, well, if we get these things set up, if you figure out what you're going to do. I've talked to agents who I said, what are you hiring for? They're like, well, I need them to do this and this and this. I need to manage my email and I need them to set appointments. And I need them to help get listings on and I need them to do social media and I need them, and it goes on. And I said, okay, you may need them to do all of those things, not right away.
Yeah. Right.
Right. We need to pick a few things, get clear on them, get clear on how we're onboarding, how we're training. You can leverage training. You can leverage onboarding, right? The agent doesn't have to do it. They just
Right.
need to make sure it gets done. So when you have that, but then I was on the other side. I started hiring admin. And all of a sudden I went, oh, it really is hard to delegate.
It really is.
It really is hard to let go. So when you're sitting on that seat and you're like, why won't they just let me do my job? And then you're on the other side and you're like, oh, because it's really hard.
Yep.
It's a mindset shift. It's a shift from doer to leader. And nobody teaches you how to do that. They
No.
just say, hire someone, right? And you're supposed to then become someone who not only knows how to do your job, but knows how to teach the job, knows how to nurture this person, knows how to like be patient when things go wrong. Like there's a lot of things nobody teaches you when you go from doer to leader.
Yeah. I mean, you can read all the leadership books you want. You can listen to all the podcasts, but really leadership is a chair you really have to sit in
Yeah.
and see how it all comes together, or in some cases doesn't, as we've all lived through, to really get how it works. And I can speak from my own experience. I ran some big organizations before I came into real estate. And we all have the mentality as kind of those entrepreneurs, those kind of team lead type people. We run fast and break things. Like that's what we do. You know, we keep moving, we cast big visions, we chase massive, ambitious goals. And oftentimes our team is left looking around like, okay, but like, what do you need me to do? Where, like, how do we get there? Like you want to go take that mountain, but like, what's the first step? And that's the one thing that I mean, I've been guilty of this many times, and I'm reminded by the team around me oftentimes, just to let's stop and let's break it down. And once we do that, it all makes sense. But that visionary role or that team leader role is hard because we always want to go after these big, ambitious goals. And sometimes we feel like we're dragging people with us rather than empowering them to go on the journey with us. When you talk to people like that and you're helping them onboard and train and establish this organization, similar stuff you did with Jim, how do you get that to all sync up? Like, what is the trick to being able to get everybody on board versus having a rainmaker or a leader just dragging people with them?
The biggest part of that is not only having a vision, but letting people know what that vision is, and not just once, right? Not like saying, here's what I want to do, and then running full speed. It's reminding people of the vision and what that's for, and making sure that the people you bring on are on board with your vision, right? Like, you don't want to bring someone on and be like, this is my vision. And they're like, that sounds dumb, right? It's not going to work.
Yeah.
So that's a really, really big piece of it, because a lot of times people don't know where they're supposed to be going. And if you don't know where you're supposed to be going, I don't care how good you are at systems administration, you're not going to know how to get there. If you know where you're going and you know why, then you can actually be a part of saying, okay, here's what we're going to need to get there. Here's the different pieces. This is what it's going to take. One of the things that can make that agent admin relationship really powerful is creating a dynamic in which that person in operations is fully empowered to push back, to say, this isn't a good idea, to say, we need to do it this way. We're moving too fast, right? To be able to say these things and to have that give and take, and not just someone who's going to be like, okay, great. You want to do that? Let's do that. You want to do that? Let's do that. Because the other thing, and I'm sure you've done this too, right? Not only do you go, fast in one direction, but then you go, oh, I'm going to go in that direction now.
No, never.
You go to a conference, you go back and you go, we're going to do this now.
Yep.
And everyone on the team is like, what?
Yep.
Why? Like, because it's great. I saw it. There was a panel and then I stopped and we're going to do it. That's great.
Yep.
So all of these things, and these things are all going to happen. They're all going to happen. And that's where having someone in that role that you've got that really good working relationship with, that you've really got, where they understand where you want to be going and they understand the business. You got to bring them into the business. A lot of times what I'll see is, I'll talk to admin. They don't know the numbers. They don't know what's going on, right? They don't know the business. They just know what they're doing. So they don't really know what's in the best interest of the business. So if the agent says, let's do this, they're like, I guess that's the smart thing to do. Right. And what you realize after you've been in it for a while is everyone's sort of figuring it out. If you're growing a business, that agent is figuring it out just as much.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that's, I love that you brought that point up, because that, that's one of those things that we struggle with all the time. Is I think in many cases we view people that agree with us as they get it. Like, those are the people we want to be around. When in reality, those are the people that are going to just let us go down whatever crazy path we've chosen, because they're not going to tell us it's crazy. Versus the person who's a real kind of business partner perspective that says, hey, that might sound good, but why don't we just stay on this course? Or that doesn't make sense with what we're doing, or you're going way off down a trail that we're not ready for. You need that person that's riding alongside of you that's going to be a little bit of they're going to enable your abilities, but they're also not going to enable you to go do whatever you want to do. They're going to keep you on track, keep you to that vision. Ultimately, that vision's got to be shared. It can't just be one person's vision that everybody's being forced to march towards. But that partnership aspect is huge. And that was a great dynamic that you and Jim had, that tight relationship where they can share those sorts of things. But when you're so passionate and you're so driven, you sometimes get blinded to all the potential pitfalls of that vision.
Right. And that's where, and that personality, like, you need that personality, to be that driver and to be, let's keep pushing, let's keep going ahead. You absolutely need that. And like you said, that person absolutely has to have someone who's willing to push back, willing to, Jim and I have, great friendship, like immense respect for each other. And, we certainly went back and forth over plenty of things over the years. And having that person, like when you create a really strong connection there, like you have a strategic partner,
Mhm.
right? You don't just have a helper, right? A helper is great, if you need a few tasks done.
Right, exactly.
Mostly people are coming in and they're saying, well, I really need this person. I'm going to hire this person. They're going to help me get my business to the next level. Okay, great. What's the next level?
Right, right.
Right.
And you've got to be open to that feedback of, I agree, I disagree, I don't see it the same way. Because I mean, there are times that I take feedback really well, and other times I don't take feedback well at all, because I see it so clearly. Then you start to get frustrated with, why doesn't everybody else see this? Well, they don't see it because either it's not the right time to see it, or they don't see it because I haven't made that connection clear enough, and that's really on me. It's not that they don't get it, which I think is what we often go to. It's the fact that we haven't helped them get it. We haven't shown people why that makes sense. And in some cases, maybe it doesn't, but we at least need to show them why we think it does.
Yeah. And one of the other areas that, I can work with people too is in being able to communicate in that way. Because
Mhm.
if you've got these two different personalities, they communicate differently,
Oh,
right?
sure.
They hear things differently. Something that, might come out of one person's mouth, could hit the other person in a way that they never intended.
Mhm.
They never intended. They're moving fast, or so you can have these misunderstandings that happen just because you don't really understand how to communicate with each other and how to create that space. And it's, again, when you bring that person in, you can go, okay, I know how to do what I've been doing really well. But there's a lot of things I don't even know that I don't know.
Yep.
And that's that space where I can come in and I can't, give you the experience of being a leader, but I can kind of open the door to here are the things that you're going to need to work on. Here is the baseline for creating that and for setting those conversations in place and for just being aware of where things come up. That when these things come up, this doesn't mean you made a bad hire,
Right.
right? It just means there's some way that you're not communicating right.
Yeah, exactly. And there's got to be a level of vulnerability there to have those candid conversations, a level of self-awareness. And then you've got to have that ability to actually realize where you are strong, where you're not strong, where you could do better. And that's hard. Like, you've got to really look at yourself in the mirror and decide, are you willing to be that open with yourself and others? Because if you are, great, you'll do well on this journey. If you're not, it's going to be a real struggle.
Right. You'll probably go through people. This is still an industry where um, administrative hires often don't last long.
Mhm.
They'll last a year and a half, 2 years, and they're gone either because they burned out or it just, wasn't working because that connection was never there. And I think a lot of that really comes down to the fact that there's there's nothing in place when they come in to make sure that they come in and it's smooth, that they come in and come together as partners. And you don't start that way, obviously, right?
Well,
You're not going to
it-
hire someone and they're going to walk in the door and you're going to be like, okay, you're a partner, you're my
right.
strategic partner, right?
That
Like you
takes
don't know the
time.
business, you don't know. Right.
Yep.
So how do you start things so that you can build up, and it is definitely like in my situation it was easier because we both started from, it was one agent, one admin, we were both figuring it out.
Mhm.
If, you're someone who's got a little more of a business and you're bringing someone in, then it's going to be a different kind of dynamic. But either way, when you're bringing somebody new in, there are really important things to consider before you even put out an ad to hire,
Mhm.
right? Not even just when you make the hire. Like who do you want to hire? Right?
Right.
People say, well, I want someone to come in and do this, 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 right? But who do you want to hire? Who is the person that you want to work with every day? Right? What kind of personality do you want as part of your culture and as part of your team? Right? Like, because if somebody comes in and they're like, well, I've got this experience and I've got these skills, I can do this. They're like, great. And they hire them and then they don't like them.
Right.
Right. And it's, do you want to work with someone you don't like?
Yeah, no, and that never works. And a lot of us think of a job description like it's a task list. So I want them to do these 5 things. And in reality, the job description is really more about finding the ideal person, not necessarily can you do these things, but are you the fit within the environment that I have, the ecosystem I've built with what I'm trying to accomplish? Not just can you check these 5 boxes, because to your point, you may end up with somebody you genuinely don't want to be around every day. And now you've gone and made a hire, you've changed their life by bringing them out of another role or, into your world. And you can't mess with somebody's life like that if you're not prepared for it.
Right. And it's just right. It slows everything down. And the skills can all be learned. Right. And
For
depending
sure.
on where you are in your business and how much you have going on, you may very well need to bring someone on with experience. You may not have time for someone to come on and learn everything.
Sure.
So yes, there is a baseline of I need someone who's got these basic skills.
Yep.
There are a lot of people I see who they want someone to come in with real estate experience. You're cutting your pool way down when you do that. And, again, you can leverage training. You don't have to be the person that trains them, and you can train any of those skills, right? We all learned them,
Oh, yeah.
right? Like none of us knew how to do real estate until we did it. And then we learned.
Yep.
So that's all learnable. You cannot teach personality. You cannot teach attitude. You can't teach someone to be a culture fit. They either are or they aren't. They either have the drive or they don't. And if they do, they're going to learn what they need to learn.
Yep. Yeah. And honestly, getting skills from other industries we've found is hugely valuable. I've got 12 plus years experience outside of real estate that I brought into real estate with me. And to your point, I had to learn real estate at some point. I had to actually start from basically square one and learn all about real estate. But I had other, business skills and financial skills that translated and give me a much different skill set. And being able to round off the team with different perspectives and skills is valuable. If everybody comes in with the same skill set, to your point earlier, that's no good. You need people that see things differently, do things differently, can handle things differently. You don't need a bunch of the same person in your organization.
No.
That's bad.
No. It's very boring too.
It is very boring. So having been on a variety of sides of this and seen things from a lot of different perspectives, what ultimately attracted you into this coaching and training side of the business?
So I've always been someone who just really enjoyed, I've always connected with people,
Okay.
all of my life. When I went to school, I was a psychology major in college and, started filling out the applications for graduate school and realized I really didn't want to do it because graduate school for psych is a lot of clinical research and things like that, which I really didn't want to do.
Mm.
So I decided not to keep going there, but I never really gave up that sense of like, I want to be able to, help people in their lives in areas that they need. So that's always been in there. And I started working with a coach in 2015.
Okay.
And I got a lot out of that. That was really powerful for me, having a coach. And at the time we were with Keller Williams, and MAPS at that point started hiring admin coaches.
Oh,
And
right.
so it was suggested that I, put in an application for that. And I did that. And so I became a MAPS coach and I trained with them and I worked with them for a while before the team had switched brokerages. And I, at that point realized that I absolutely loved coaching, being able to have these conversations, and what I learned in the training in being able to connect more deeply and understand people more deeply. So I really, really loved that. I wasn't able to do it for a while after we made the switch. And then Jim and I actually started talking like, do we want to do some coaching together? It was really, really more my passion on it. And I hit a point, about a year ago, well, a little over a year ago now, where I really just knew that what I wanted to do was work with people, not the systems, not the operations, right? Like I'd been a DOO for a long time, and I left the team with a fully functional operations team that totally handled the day to day without me. So I put that in place, and where the part of my job at that point that I loved was the one-on-ones,
Mm,
was when someone would come to me to talk through something and I was able to help them find the answer.
yep.
And right around that same time, a friend of mine who has a company, we talked about, collaborating on a few things, and the timing was perfect. And I decided to make the switch and jump out on my own and go and be able to bring that value, like bring all of these things that I've learned out into the larger community, into the industry, and try to bring some of those things. So the things that I learned over years, which I can help people learn over months, or at least get started learning.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of there's many coaches out there. I always laugh at the example of like the 25-year-old life coach. There's many coaches out there that are just kind of teaching you concepts out of a book. Whereas you're somebody who's lived this over a period of time and you've already made all the mistakes. You've already seen all the problems. You can actually help somebody find the shorter path to success by learning from the things that you did. And we believe firmly in the idea of success leaves clues. And why try to recreate the wheel and go on your own when you can literally just talk to the people that have already been there, who in most cases are happy to share with you what path they took.
Right. Yeah. And it's one of those, the big gap that I see, and this is what I really want to kind of pour into that gap is that part where nobody teaches you how to be a leader.
Right.
Nobody even tells you need to learn how to be a leader. They just tell you
No,
to hire someone.
just you get smacked in the face with it at some point.
Right. Right. At some point, you're like, I don't know what I'm doing with this person I hired.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I've made bad hires. I've made, mistakes where, things weren't working and I let it go on too long. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've made plenty of those mistakes, not set the groundwork right, seen, when you do set it right, um, seen how people can really, really blossom when you give them encouragement and support. Um, and that's really a beautiful thing to watch, like how much people can really blossom when they feel safe and supported and cared for.
Mm-hmm.
They will put so much into your business, right? Like you can micromanage them all day long and they will get worse,
Yes,
right? You give
100%.
them support, you let them feel like you trust them and you believe in them, and they will grow in ways that you won't even expect.
Yeah, exactly. Create the environment where you're enabling them to be who they ultimately can be to enable their success. And that's when everybody wins. You're not trying to stifle somebody's creativity or personality or skills. You're just trying to find a way to best utilize them so that everybody can win together.
Right.
So, all right. So when you look at your journey, what do you see as being most important to your success? A particular habit, trait, mindset, mentor? What would you point to?
I think the biggest thing is that I really openly listen to people.
Hmm.
Um, I listen without judgment, and I'm really genuinely curious. So when somebody tells me what's going on, I don't have to remember, okay, ask coaching questions, right? Like go underneath.
Yep.
I want to know what's underneath, right? They say, well, this is what's going on. Well, I want to know, okay, well, what is the rhythm of communication that you have? What are the standards and expectations? Were expectations set?
Mm-hmm.
Often they are not, right? So I
Very
really
true.
want to know what's going on. And I truly believe that most people come from a good place and are doing the best that they can.
Mhm.
So people are not coming into it saying, I want to be an overbearing manager. I want to be an underperforming worker. People aren't coming into it this way. They're doing their best. And if that's not working, I want to know why and I want to help them.
Yeah. Yeah. I always love the question of what does success look like? Like, just paint me that picture. What does success look like? And I like to ask that of the leaders. I also like to ask that of the candidates, because that gives you an idea of, do you both view success the same way? Because if you don't, there's either a potential gap you can't fix, or there's an expectation you've got to make sure you set between the two of you to make sure that fit is there. Because if you enter it blindly, like so many people do, and I'm sure you've seen, that's when you end up stuck with a relationship that doesn't work and frustration on both sides because you weren't clear on what success looked like.
Yep. What does success look like? Where are we going? What am I actually looking for? Um, Here's a big one that comes up is, am I going to need you to answer the phone at 9 o'clock on a Thursday sometimes?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
What are the boundaries that are important and need to be held?
Yeah, that's a big one.
Right? Because agents work 24/7, and that's
Yep.
fine. That's a choice. And then they hire someone, and that person did not sign up to work 24/7.
Right.
But
And if you
often
really,
ends up working that way.
yeah, and if you really needed that, there's an expectation that should have been set so they're not shocked. It goes back to when you're mad somebody's not doing something, you have to question, did I tell them they need to be doing that? Like, did I set that expectation, or am I just assuming they're going to do it because I would?
Right. One of the things I'd like to talk to people about, and this comes from Brene Brown, she talks about being really clear. She says, clear is kind, right? So being really clear and saying, what does done look like?
Mhm.
Right? Like if you ever ask someone like, hey, can you do this? And they come back and they say, yep, it's done. And then you find out later that they didn't do what you wanted them to do.
Yep.
You didn't tell them what done looked like. And they didn't ask, right? So that's two parts of it. We'll also
Right.
coach people, ask that question. What does done look like? How, like, does this have to happen today? Right? Because you might say, hey, can you take care of this? And you're thinking, I just asked you to do it. It's really important. And they're thinking, I have 7 other things on my plate and I'll do it later. And that conversation doesn't happen either.
Yep.
And now you're mad because it didn't happen, or you're checking up on them every 20 minutes. And when they could have just said, absolutely, I have a lot on my plate right now. I could get to it by the end of today. Would that work?
Yep.
No, it's super important. Okay, what do you want me to put on hold? It's simple, right?
Yeah, clarity is powerful and scary. Because sometimes it's hard to get clarity. Like you're afraid to ask those questions. You're like, well, what if they don't like that? What if they don't want that? What if that's not what they mean? But clarity is powerful in the sense that now when you get to the end and you are done, like you're at the same point. But it's a really tricky subject.
It really is, because yes, people are scared to ask it. And honestly, sometimes the agents don't want them.
Yeah.
Right? They're frustrated by the questions.
Yeah, exactly. They're
They're like,
off
well,
to
you should know
off to
what's
something else.
right? Like I've heard this one. Well, they should know what's important. How?
Yeah, right.
Right? Like, or if it's like, if you're in an environment where they're working with multiple agents, well, 3 different agents just gave them something to do. They're all super important.
Right.
And let's be honest, most of the things are not as urgent as people think they are.
Right. Yeah. Never. When everything's important, nothing's important. But unfortunately, we all feel like everything's important. It's just our nature.
So that's where like I'll work with the admin to be able to say, to set an expectation of here's when I can get it done.
Mhm.
Or, I'm not clear, like what does this look like when it's done? If you're not clear, really asking those questions and, pushing back. If someone's like, this has to be done right now, if you've got other things and you have the experience level to really know what is super important, you go, okay, well, what makes this really important right now? Because, let's say they're like, you have to get this over to the attorney. And they're like, well, the purchase and sale is due in 2 days. So why is this a right now thing? Right. And maybe there's a reason. There
Yeah.
may be a reason that wasn't communicated. And they're like, well, I just told you to do it. And that works sometimes. But overall, what you're going to create is someone who drops what they're doing every time you send them something and never gets anything done well, because they drop what they're doing every time you send them something instead of staying focused. And you're like, well, why does everything take
Yep.
forever and they make mistakes? So, well, they're doing 7 things at once.
Right. Well, that leads us perfectly into the next question here. What's the most difficult lesson you've actually learned along the way?
I think the most difficult one was that when you don't deal with something, like if there's something that's not working and you don't deal with it, it becomes something big and painful. And had a situation where, we had someone on the team and, it was clear for a while the dynamic wasn't working. It wasn't quite working as a culture fit. And you just, it's hard to have that conversation, right? So it's how to have that conversation. And then you try to have the conversation, but you're not good at it. So somehow by the end of the conversation, you've backtracked everything that you meant to say. And what can happen with that is that not only does the situation get worse, you lose confidence in yourself. You're like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And it can become really toxic. So that was like the hardest lesson I had to learn, was being in that spot where I knew like I had to take a really, really hard look at where had I not shown up the way that I needed to. And it was hard because I was angry,
Mm.
right? Like I was angry. Like I wanted the other person to be wrong.
Yep.
And what I had to do was sit down and go, okay, as a leader, where did I miss things? Where did I not speak up? Where did I let myself get pushed back when I shouldn't have? So those are hard, especially sometimes like it's not the right person and you really like them.
Right. Been there.
So I think that the tough conversations, those are the hardest to learn.
Yep. Yeah. And to your point, they're the ones that we try to avoid because we don't want the discomfort and we're almost hoping that the issue resolves itself. But if we don't take control, then the issue never seems to resolve itself.
No, it just gets worse.
Yeah. All right. So last question before we wrap up here. What is the one piece of advice you wish you had gotten when you first got into real estate?
To learn about different communication styles sooner. There's a lot of pieces to learn. There's paperwork, there's, legal things. There's the real estate class that teaches you nothing you need to know.
Right.
I knew how many square feet were in an acre long enough to pass a test.
Yep.
And
we've all been there.
But what really, really makes the difference is how you can bring different personalities onto the same page, like how to communicate effectively with people who are a completely different personality with you, right? And this is wherever you are in real estate, whether you're an agent, whether you're a team leader, whether you're an admin, you're going to be dealing with people who have very different personalities from you. Maybe it's at a consult, maybe it's with your boss, maybe it's with your hire. How do you communicate and how do you know yourself well enough to understand why you're responding a certain way to things?
Yeah, that's good. People go into all the different components of communication and body language and tone and all that stuff, but ultimately I find that it's the words you choose, it's how you do it, it's when you do it. It's so important to be back to the idea of clarity. It's so important to make sure you're actually telling people what you need to tell them and not what you think they're willing to hear or accept. And it's hard. Like, and it took me, I remember when I was early, my first role, when I was managing people, it was, well, I don't want them to hate me. So like, how can I deliver bad news in the softest way? How can I be friendly? And it doesn't work. Like you have to be able to be the person in charge. You've got to be the leader and everybody's looking to you to be the leader. And if you're afraid to take that stance and be firm and be direct and be clear, then really nobody succeeds and you've accomplished nothing.
Right. You're not doing anyone any favors. And you're not making anyone's life easier, and, with like, personality things, like, it was, the ABA was big for a while and the disc, right? And I've heard people use it the way people use astrology, right? They're like, well, I'm a D, so I'm just going to run over people and I'm a jerk, right?
Yep.
I'm like, that's not how it works.
Right.
You say, well, I'm a D, so I understand that sometimes I roll over people and I need to be really conscious of the fact that I roll over people, right? And I'm a D, so I understand that sometimes I'm going to be frustrated when somebody who really likes to talk is talking to me. And if I need to extricate myself, I need to do it politely.
Yep.
Right? Like it's about understanding you and understand, how do you communicate with others? It's not on other people
Yep.
to make sure that they talk to you the right way.
Yeah, it's really powerful. Really powerful stuff. All right. So let's take it home now, Olivia. So for those people that want to get in touch with you, learn more about the coaching, the training, maybe more about you, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
So my email address is olivia@synergyiseverything.com. I have a Facebook page, Synergy Coaching and Consulting. You can tell it's me because my face is in the profile picture. And my phone number is 774-314-9640. So
Awesome.
any of those ways works.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate the time today.
Well, thank you for having me on. It was fun.
My pleasure. Thanks, Olivia.